Some might say that the New Testament doesn't give us a complete picture of everything early Christians did. So, is not it possible that worship language and practices developed later, even if they were not recorded in the earliest letters?
Well, there's almost two questions there. First off, yes, indeed, over the centuries, Christian meeting practices evolved, not always for the better, but they have greatly changed over the years. But one of the first things that occurred to me, and this may be what you're referring to there, when I first got into this and realized and studied all the times that the word worship is found in the Bible, and realized it's not used in the context of a Christian assembly, one of the options is to conclude that, well, of course they all believed that they went to church to worship God. Of course they did. They just didn't think to mention it in all these times because they knew everybody already would accept that idea. Okay, that's a possibility. But what my research did was start to do a deep dive into all the 5 different Greek words that are translated as worship and study what they mean. And if you study what they actually mean, they do not refer to what Christians did in their assemblies. And none of those words, by the way, refer to singing or to praying, which are two concepts or two activities that we commonly associate with this English word worship. But none of those Greek words are associated with singing or praying. So there's that. So that helps to explain why the New Testament does what it does. It doesn't use these worship words because these Greek words do not apply to what Christians did in their gatherings. And the second thing I did in order to sort of test out this theory, well, let's say in the first century, Christians did not use worship language to refer to what they did in their gatherings. And that's actually true. But what about the second century? Maybe by the second century, they'd all start, of course, referring to we go to church to worship God. I worshiped here last week. I'm going to worship over there next week. And when you were in worship, what did you do? How was your worship this week? Well, even in the second century, that language is absent. They don't talk about gatherings as worship. So let's go in. And by the way, there's a large volume of Christian literature from the second century. You can explore this in. So then I turned to third century. Well, certainly by the third century, they would be using worship language to refer to what they did in their gatherings. Nope, not in the third century either. So you got 300 years going by where they're not using this language. It can no longer be explained as just this anomaly. They just forgot to mention it. No. There are vast volumes and thousands of pages of Christian literature where it's just absent. By the fourth century, though, then you start to see some of this language develop. And my research also went into try to explain how it started and how it got to where it is. And we can go down that path if you want. But it's the fourth century Christianity which starts to resurrect these ideas. And they are not, in fact, first century ideas. And I would even submit that they are not really Christian ideas either.